All right. Okay, I think we're live. Hey, everyone. Nice to be with you. Thanks for coming in. Welcome to the session. Welcome to this week's live Sacred Space session. I think this is probably our 22nd or 23rd session of the pandemic. I just want to say, as always, thank you for joining me in this session. And I'm super honored, as always, to be with you here in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty. And I look forward to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space today. So the things I want to do in our time together today in sacred space is, number one, I'll go ahead and set sacred space after this intro. And then I want to talk about an overall topic. And the topic today will be the sacred and profane in beauty and art. And I'll sort of explain that a bit more when we get into it. We'll have a bit of an exercise, and then we'll close sacred space. If you have questions, please post them to Crowdcast. Actually, let me just check Facebook. If you want to post questions in the comments on Facebook, we can do that as well. We'll sort of take them from there, and then we'll do a separate sort of more dedicated session to Q&A, I think in the next week or two. So in setting sacred space, we just want to kind of say what our intention here is that we would like to create a space amongst all of us here. And this applies to those of you attending live, but also when you watch the replay, you end up doing this as well. We want to create and maintain a space devoid of fear, threat, and control in order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves. However we define higher guidance, it can be intuition, it can be however you think of it. And the idea is that we want to have a safe sanctuary space for us all to just relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat, so that we can partake of the nourishment, the emotional nourishment and spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together in group. And in opening sacred space today, I would propose that we all follow the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. Number 1 is confidentiality. Now, since we're online, the way we do confidentiality is that if you want to chat or post a question, and you wish to do that anonymously, you don't have to. You would go into your Crowdcast profile. You would just edit profile somewhere, like click on your icon or something, and then go in and just change your name to Harry Potter or Mickey Mouse or whatever, and then you can participate anonymously. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the idea that within sacred space, there is no action or feeling where we, give each other the feeling of threat, controlling. There's no fixing. There's no intervention. There's no tough love. There's no, well, I'm just telling this for your own good. There's none of that. The idea here is that we're holding space for each other to be however we are. Right, without judgment, without intervention, regardless of good intention or bad intention. To be afraid, to be anxious, to be happy, to be relaxed, to be happy and relaxed in the middle of all this, and to feel, guilty or uncomfortable about that, or to feel not guilty, right? However you are, right? And basically to hold space for that. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with tough love or even threat or controlling, right? Or sort of doing something for your own good. But because that's of the realm of fear, threat, and control, that's what happens in profane space. Profane is not bad, as we'll go into more detail today. Profane is not bad, it's just profane. It's just a different flavor. And there are certain things you can only get in the profane, and there are certain things you can only get in the sacred. So when we come into sacred space, we're not saying profane is bad, we're just saying we're not doing that right now. And if there's something burning, there's a recommendation you want to make or something, we can do that later in profane space. But in sacred space, there are certain things, emotional and spiritual nourishment, things you can release to within yourself, guidance you can receive that you can only do in sacred space. So we hold a space that is ideally only sacred so that we can do those things. Right? And it's only for an hour or two. The third principle related to this is there's no commerce. Right? So in sacred space, nothing may be sold or recommended or suggested. Right? So even if you're like, well, there's this great book I've read that, and I don't get any money from recommending the book. Even that we just don't do that, right? That's sort of fixing tough love. Because we are here for your energy, not for the things you bring. In other words, we're here for what you are, not for what you do or provide. And so that's the third principle. And then the fourth and final principle, again, related to everything, is that there is no expectation of participation, right? There's no pressure to do anything, to chat or not chat, to post questions or not post questions. You can come and go as you please. You can be watching and cooking or folding the laundry or texting, right? That's all perfectly okay. The nourishment comes from the held space of all of us together. And your presence and attention, right, from what you are, not what you do or provide. And we've done so many of these sessions, I can sort of, now I have the luxury of freely referencing my past sessions because, obviously you've all watched all of them, right? And so, you can hold sacred space on your own through meditation, through reflection. But when you do it in a group, the effect is amplified, right? The effect is amplified. And that's why we gather here every Sunday to kind of hold space together, create this like feast of emotional and spiritual nourishment that's created by our holding sacred space for each other. And then we all together kind of just gorge on the energy that we create together. It's kind of this lovely thing. So anyway, this is what I propose. And if you are not okay with doing that, that's totally okay. We will pause and give you a moment to withdraw from the group. And that's perfectly fine. We'll catch up with you later in profane space next to the, we'll have a latte next to the goat vendor stand, right? And no worries at all. In other words, there's no fear, threat, or control to get you to come to sacred space or stay in sacred space either, because it's sacred space. Okay. So I'll give you all a moment to make your choice as to whether you would like to stay in this space and continue, or enter into the space and continue. All right. And so now for the rest of us, we will move together into sacred space. And as we come into sacred space together, I'll just remind that the 4 principles we're following are confidentiality, no fear, threat, or control, no commerce, and no expectation of participation. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is like one of the best parts of my week. And so the topic I want to hit today is this topic of the sacred and profane in the realm of beauty and art. Okay. And I'm super excited about this topic. The sacred and profane, right, is the theme overall that has sort of held the arc of all the sessions we've been doing together. And we will look at, archetype and different scenarios where the sacred and profane come into effect, and situations, right? And we also want to look in this series at the physics of the sacred and profane, and how they work in different realms of life and reality. So for instance, when we talk about meditation, there's a sacred way of doing that. I mean, the purpose arguably is to create, temporary full-on sacred space within you. But meditation can be easily profaned as well when you start berating yourself over like, I'm a bad meditator, I stink, or holding yourself to a rigid regimen where it's like, I must do meditation every morning. Even if you don't feel like it, you fear, threat, and control yourself into doing meditation. Maybe it was all for the best because it helped you stay on track. But, and again, so profane is not bad. But it's this idea of, in this series, one of the things that's kind of just nerdy fun for us to do is to explore the physics of sacred versus profane in different realms and what that feels like, what that looks like, right? And so one of these realms is the realm of art and beauty, which definitely has a sacred aspect and a profane aspect, which are often deeply intertwined in very interesting ways. Now, I want to reaffirm the point here that when we say sacred and profane, we're not saying profane is bad and sacred is good, right? I mean, the reflex when you have a this versus that to instantly say this is bad, this is good, is itself a profane reflex, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So if you like take the profane reflex and you say, oh, profane is bad, sacred is good, in the sacred, it's like, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not going to threaten you to not exercise your profane reflex, right? But it is this reflex to say profane is bad, so you'd better not be profane, right? Fear, threat, and control. That itself is a profane reflex. So you can be all profane if you want to, but the trick is to know what the difference is, what it tastes like versus what sacred tastes like, so that you can make your own sovereign decisions, and then you can live the flavor of life that you actually want to live. I was with a friend a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and he came over to my place here in Northern California, and I made him lunch. And I made him a Chinese dish. I think it was like chow fun style, like beef and onions or something on rice. And, I was explaining all the different soy sauces, what dark soy sauce is versus light soy sauce. And he asked me as we're eating, right? He asked me, so Artie, like, what is the secret of Chinese cooking? I always seem to have friends who ask me these big open-ended questions. So of course I was like, okay, I don't know how to answer that. And it made me pause. I think actually it was a ploy by him to get me to talk more so he can eat more of the food. I'm not sure. I haven't asked him yet, but I think I should probably ask him. But I was like, I don't know. And one thing that came to me was that for many cuisines, there is this sort of bliss point of a mix of 3 or 4 different elements. And the main 3 elements are like salty, sweet, and fat, right? And then there's this 4th element of like umami, this Japanese sense of umami, this sort of 5th flavor, right? And before long, we were tasting different soy sauces and isolating the different flavors and sort of nerding out on what felt like the bliss point. And the point, and the reason I bring this up, I will bring it back to our talk here. The point was that there is this general lens, the secret of Chinese cooking. There's so many elements, right? But there is this general lens of salty, sweet, and fat. And then once you know that those are the 3 elements, then you experiment and then you decide, right, what your own personal bliss point is. In other words, salty is not bad, fat is not bad, sweet is not bad. But then when you understand the nature of each one of the 3, you can then decide with the understanding of the physics of the thing to get what you actually want, right, to attain your need and want, and then eventually to transcend, to attain your desire as well. And the point is, your bliss point may be very different from my bliss point, and that's okay. That's part of the beauty of life, right? So in other words, your own bliss point, and you can mix this in many different ways, but your own bliss point of, say, salt, sweet, and fat may be very different from mine. And then your own bliss point of how you live your life in the realms of need, want, and desire may be very different from mine, and that is okay too. And so then talking about the sacred and profane is just like that, right? It's not salty, sweet, and fat. It's not just need, want, and desire. It's sacred and profane is not bad. It's just the other flavor, right? And then you do your own mix as you like to get your own bliss point of perfect flavor in your life. You decide, right? Ironically, there is no fear, threat, or control over deciding. So finding your bliss point, kind of the physics of it, it's perhaps easier to find your bliss point when you're in the realm of the sacred. And so that's why people gravitate toward the sacred, even though they're pulled back into the profane. So that's how I think about sacred and profane as a kind of lens for you to find your bliss point. And what's interesting in this series is that we get a chance to just kind of, the conceit here is that I'm giving these sacred space sessions to sort of all of us to gather, and we're doing that. But, we also have to do something together. So we do exercises, we read poems, but also like I get to kind of talk about whatever the heck I feel like talking about. And somehow you all don't mind, which I'm very grateful for. And I can talk without worrying about, is this good for a program? Because I promised you I'd get you from point A to point B. And is this, targeted at the right level? I don't worry about any of that. I just, I was telling a friend the other day, ex post facto, looking at the Sacred Space series and everything we've talked about, it is kind of the most, almost embarrassingly so, direct kind of flashlight to the brain of like all the sort of garbage and rocks that are floating around in my brain. The topics I kind of just think about and feel like talking about when I can talk about anything. So today then, we're going to talk about the sacred and profane, what the different flavors are in the realm of art and beauty, so that you can taste what sacred art is and profane art is, so that you can find your own bliss point of perfection in your own life. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Last week, we talked about the artist archetype and how it connected or joined the archetypes of the trickster, the healer, even the hierophant, like priest or priestess, enabler of divine revelation. And in the process of that talk, we just brushed on the topic of the sacred and profane in art and beauty. And today I want to dive more directly into that. Now, I will take as my, sacred and profane in art and beauty is, obviously I'm not the first person to talk about this, and I won't be the last. And so I will take as my sort of core starting point for this topic, the basic framework taught by Joseph Campbell when he has explained art and beauty, using for his core the perspective of his fellow Irishman, James Joyce, right? So there is this sort of ancestral tree from Joyce to Campbell. So Campbell would teach about Joyce, use Joyce to teach about art and beauty. And then I will use what Campbell has talked about in sort of making my comments today. Now Joe Campbell, Professor Campbell, as most of you know, is known for, coining the term "follow your bliss" and "hero with 1,000 faces," and all of that stuff. But the topics he taught on were way beyond this, right? He was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College of, I think, folklore and mythology for like 38 years. So he wrote all these books, he gave all these talks. So his scope of work is very vast, and his work is just like an endless treasure trove of abundance. All of the sort of thinkers I take as my intellectual ancestors, right? The ones who give me guidance, protection, and identity and wisdom. They all left these huge treasure troves behind. And so it's like if for me, you were like, who's Artie? Oh yeah, he's that 7-day healing guy, haha. And that's cool. But then you get into all these sacred space topics and there's just no structure anymore. There's just this random buffet, which are more a reflection of all the things floating around my mind, right? So everything I'm going to explain from, let's say, here forward is basically from Campbell's buffet, for the most part. Campbell's teachings on James Joyce and a bit of Aristotle. And my point here is nothing is original. I'm just flowing it through as it was explained to me, as I have come to internalize it in my own life, flowed through you for your entertainment and edification. Now, obviously, I will add some original insights here, but I'm not a scholar, so I don't care about footnoting me or anybody else. So if my insights get mistakenly credited to my luminary ancestors, then that's okay. The debt I owe them can never be repaid anyway. All right, so with that disclaimer, let's dive in. Let me see how I'm going to do this here. What I want to do is I have some slides. We have slides today. And I will do I'm going to do a screen share of my entire screen so that you can see my writing. Okay, so it looks like you should be able to see my screen. I can't really see. Can people? Okay, I'm just going to assume you can see my screen. And so in the Joycean conception of art, there are two kinds of art. Proper art, turn on my pen here, proper art and improper art. Okay. And just to step through this really, really quickly, we'll start with improper art. Improper art, and we can actually loosely think about these as profane art and sacred art. Okay, and I'm kind of like giving away the show by naming these sacred and profane now, but I want you to have this framework so that as I move into the description of either or both of these types of art, you can connect that with the flavor of the sacred that we've already developed and the flavor of the profane we've already developed. Okay. So the main characteristic of improper art, according to Joyce, and as taught by Campbell, is that improper art is kinetic. Improper art moves. Okay. And the way it moves you to desire and loathing. As the Wall Street guys would say, greed and fear. Right? Desire, loathing, greed, and fear. And so there are just a bunch of connections here. And so I'm just going to make these side comments that those of you who like make this connection will need this. And those of you who don't worry. It's a replay. You can come back to it years later, right? So one of the reasons the realm of the profane in general, improper art, kinetic, one of the reasons it's kinetic is because when we talk about the Tao Te Ching session we did a couple months ago on the nature of reality, and we talked about the one thing, right, and how it's chopped up by naming into many different things. Once you chop up the thing, which is illusory, but it's, if you punch me in the face, it feels pretty real, right? So it is real. I mean, the illusion is like high def, okay? When the single thing is broken into the 10,000 things, that's when you have movement. That's also, by the way, when you have time, right? You need multiple things. In order to have time, you need counting, i.e. naming, and you need movement, which means you need more than one thing. Because if there's only one thing and there's no second thing, there is no movement. And that's why sort of Hindu Shaivist masters will often say, they're like describe the ultimate and they're like nothing moves. And the corollary is there is no time, right? Nothing moves and there is no time. So when you drop into that enlightenment experience of meditation, one of the things you experience is that, all is oneness, which means nothing moves and there is no time. And so to say the improper is kinetic and it moves you is instant, like sort of dog whistle, cowbell, or in the realm of the profane. And again, when we talked about salty, sweet, and fat, the profane is not bad, right? It's like, it's not an accident that the world was cut into sacred and profane. It's like, there are all kinds of frameworks of like, we are all the one, but, we're kind of bored. So we're just playing this game called Where Are the 10,000 Things? And it's fun. And even the scary parts are meant to be like, just like when I don't like horror movies. I don't like scary movies, but, people go in and they pay to see a scary movie, which I don't understand. But they're paying for it. So, it must be a thing. So we're in the realm of the kinetic. And the two directions of the kinetic, right, are desire and fear. So when you are moved in one or two ways, desire and fear. Okay. Now, let me see if I've got the right slides for this. Let's do, oops. Let me see. Okay, I don't see any chat emergency. Artie, I can't see your screen, so I'm going to assume everything's still rolling. Okay. So the two kinds of improper art are didactic and pornographic. Didactic is basically threat, fear. Didactic means, you better not do this. You better not do this. So if I write a treatise on gun control or warning you about climate change, it can be this dry piece, or it can be this beautiful work of art, like, Silent Spring, right? It was this beautiful book. So it was art, but it was more didactic art, because at the end of Silent Spring, you're like, oh my gosh, we're like killing the environment. We need to get up and do something. So it's kinetic. It makes us move, right? So again, would you say Silent Spring is like bad? No, it's not bad, right? But it's not proper art in Joyce's terms. It's improper art. It's didactic art, art that moves you to do something and protect the environment. It's not moving you to do a bad thing. It's just, so again, it's just that flavor of the bliss point of what is your personal bliss point? What kind of art do you like, right? It's okay to like improper art. It's just knowing what the flavors are so you can mix salty, sweet, fat to get your own bliss point, okay? The other kind of art is what Joyce would call pornographic. And pornographic puts you into a state of kinetics through the mechanism not of threat or fear, but desire. Okay, and the classic example that Joe Campbell used in the talk I heard, I think it was from like the 70s, was he said, so what's an example of porn? Let me do my best Joe Campbell voice. What's an example of pornographic art, right? And you're flipping through a magazine and you see this picture, this advertisement of a refrigerator with a beautiful girl next to it. And you look at that photo and you say, oh, golly gee, I'd love to have a refrigerator like that. Right? So improper art, pornographic improper art, is based on desire. And it moves you toward it. Right? So art that when you see it makes you want to go and grab the thing. Right, so it doesn't mean like it can mean sexual porn, of course, but the strict Joycean term of pornographic applies to anything. It's not necessarily sexual. So when you see a car ad, and the car is like driving down like Highway 1 in Northern California, and you see the coast and the cliffs, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's hugging the curve so nicely, right? It makes you want the car. So it invokes desire within you, and Joyce would call that improper art of the pornographic kind. Okay. And so novelists, right, who will write novels that are basically a treatise to get you to like do this, right? And even Silent Spring is like just descriptions of like gorgeous, like sort of meadows and, you know, sort of baby animals and everything. And then they're like, you know, destroyed by our, ecological transgressions or whatever. You could say that that work of art is didactic and pornographic, both at the same time, right? It's pulling you in with desire and then getting you to like learn the lesson and fear the thing. When I show you like polar bears, right? Polar bears. So it was like, oh, the wonderful polar bear, look at the polar bear family. And then I show you, you know, polar bears drowning because of climate change. That's pornography matched with didactics. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It makes me open my wallet and give more contributions. And it's like, I know what they're going toward. I'm paying for that art and I'm okay with that because, you know, we don't want to suffer the effects of climate change, right? Now, that is improper art. So then what is proper art? What is going on over here then? Because this, like what I just described, that basically just, for most people, that describes like, it's like, what do you mean that's improper? That's just art. Isn't that just art? Like, what else is there? And this is art in the profane mode. And because of our, you know, because our lives are 99% profane, we're like, isn't that everything? You have this inkling, right? This hint in the back of your head that there could be something else. And this is why Joyce is such a giant, because he puts his finger on the jugular of it. Improper art is static. Is static. Improper art, when you regard it and see it, does not make you move. It does not make you want or loathe. Right? It does not pull you into it saying, oh my gosh, I want that. And it does not make you say, oh my gosh, that's repulsive, get it away from me. It is not kinetic, it is static. It does not make you move. And there's a particular effect of proper art if it's done well, where you look at it and you're just dumbstruck. You're dumbstruck. Right? You look at a certain still life, like a Matisse still life, like a Monet still life, right? And you're just looking at the flowers, you're looking at the goldfish. It doesn't make you want to go out and buy lilies or irises. It doesn't make you want to go out and start, you know, starting a fish tank. But you just look at it, and hopefully, if you're not standing next to an art critic who is like, oh, look at the composition, and this was from this period or that period, hopefully no one's next to you like talking it away. And you're just alone with the work of art. And it just makes you go, right? It's not exactly pleasure in the usual sense, because it's not feeding on your need or want. It's satisfying a kind of desire in some ways. But for most of us, it's a desire we don't even know we had. Right? Everything in an art museum satisfies at the desire level, except for maybe the gift shop, right? Satisfies at the desire level, which is why when you go to an art museum, it's very nourishing and fulfilling. But when you don't go, when you haven't been for a year, it doesn't hurt, because it's not at the level of need or want, it's at the level of desire. That's why art is sort of, proper art especially, is largely blissful. And artists who have an inclination toward proper art, when they're pulled into the roles of working for an advertising agency and making things that move you in the didactic or pornographic direction, it's kind of okay, because it feeds, at least they're drawing, at least they're, you know, a graphic artist, illustrator, graphic designer. At least they're getting a bit of a fix, but over time they burn out, because you're constantly in the profane and not in the sacred. You know, you're following your bliss almost at the need want level, never ever at the desire. level, and there's something, profoundly unsatisfying about that over time. So this state of being dumbstruck, right? There's all these kinds of physics of the state of being dumbstruck that I won't go into today. But Joyce would call this the state of aesthetic arrest. Aesthetic arrest, right? This static state. So you see this work of art and you're arrested, right? And this to me is the sacred aspect of art. It just makes you go, and your jaw just falls to the floor, right? And you're like a deer in the headlights. You're like a dumb animal. Your brain turns off. Your brain turns off. So the characteristic of proper art is aesthetic arrest. The characteristic of improper art, static, kinetic, sacred, profane, didactic, pornographic. All right. So that's the basic high-level Joycean conception of the different kinds of art. So just to play with these terms a little bit, all marketing and advertising, right, is in the realm of the profane. Now, again, remember, we keep saying this is not bad and this is not good. It's like sacred and profane, salt, fat, sweet. Salt is not bad, fat is not bad, sweet is not bad. Proper, improper art are not bad. It's just the blend you want to reach your own personal bliss point. So as an example, all marketing and advertising is in the realm of the profane because it utilizes fear, threat, and control to get you to move, right? The purpose of marketing and advertising, the goal is kinetics. The goal is to get you to do something out of fear or greed, ideally both. Ideally both, right? So all truly great marketing is improper art, profane art. All great marketers employ both fear and greed. And so to put another way, all great marketers are didactic pornographers, right? It sounds a little naughty when I say it like that, but in this framework, all great advertising and marketers are didactic pornographers. And that's okay. There's a place for that, right? In the profanum, the goat marketer, our friend the goat marketer that we always refer back to, the great goat marketers don't just haggle with you and sort of buy the goat per pound or whatever. They will say, oh, kind madam, oh, kind sir, we have a specific kind of goat for every god or goddess, right? If you're sacrificing to Athena, only the best goat will do for Athena. And it is only this goat, and this goat costs whatever, some like exorbitant amount. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't afford that. Well, that's okay. We have much cheaper goats. But if you sacrifice the wrong kind of goat to Athena, you better add these other trinkets just to make sure she doesn't like get pissed and strike you down with lightning. Right? So desire and fear, didactics and pornography, right? So what are you sort of going to be talking to Athena about? Right? Are you looking to Athena for illness or, dealing with a cheating spouse or a stubborn child, money worries? Or for each one of those, we have a different kind of goat specific for illness, specific for Athena. But that goat's really, I only have one goat left of that, and somebody's actually put a hold on it. But if you want, I can break the hold. I know the other customer. I'll make it okay with them. But it's going to cost you this, and the price is even higher. Okay. And so, all great marketers are didactic pornographers. And this, by the way, not that you need any more explanation. This is why in sacred space, we can't recommend things to you. Right? This is why in sacred space, I can't sell you anything. Right? At this point, I don't even do Q&A in sacred space because questions will come up. Don't you do this program or that program? And I can talk around it, but it makes me uncomfortable because like when I'm in sacred space with you, I'm enjoying the feast of the energy we create as well. And I don't want to go into, my didactic pornographer mode. Right? So let's pull this to like an even more comical. So this means I am a didactic pornographer as well, right? When I harangue you in a Facebook ad and then offer you my shiny programs to solve all your ills, I am practicing profane art. I am a didactic pornographer, trickster, artist, hierophant. And in the profana of Facebook, my ads up there next to cat videos and fake news, right? I do this. And again, I don't need any justification. I'm not saying, oh, I do this, but it's for a good reason. I don't need a good reason. If I'm doing this just to collect your money so I can buy more, expensive cheese or whatever. I mean, if you want it, you want it. You're not doing it because I'm doing it for the right reason or wrong reason, right? But for me in the profane, I do this as my, for those of you who know the word, as my upaya, right? As my gambit to get you into the temple of the sacred eventually, right? I kind of trick you into the temple to get you to the revelation of the divine and the sacred within you, right? Not the one that I offer, the sacred within you. And then you become calm and more clear to your own inner bliss, right? All of you who are like gathered, you know me through my commercial Facebook page for Preside Meditation. All of you who are alums of my programs came to me for the most part through advertising that I've done, okay? And that's okay. That's okay, right? If you didn't like my programs, you wouldn't be here. And if you asked for a refund, you would have just gotten a refund. No big deal. And so this is also, so for Preside, for instance, there is a bliss point between salt, sweet, and fat, between proper and improper art, between sacred and profane, static and kinetic, right? So now I have the luxury of setting up just this sacred space. And we all enjoy it together. But the temple of the sacred space was built by the profane art of the programs that I sell. Okay, that's why I can do this full time. That's why I can sit around all week and think about what I'm going to talk about on Sunday. And so, I mean, maybe I'm like, belaboring this point, but both are good, right? Both are a part of life. And your bliss point comes in how you blend the two, okay? Even churches, right? Temples, all that marble, frankincense, stained glass, right? That didn't, God didn't deliver those in trucks from heaven, right? That came from merchants, donors who made their money in the profane, right? In the profane. And sometimes they made it in okay ways, sometimes they made it in not okay ways. And one of the ways of cleansing themselves was to hand it back over to the sacred, right? And so, that's just life, right? So I'm trying to pull multiple strands together. Now, this is also the state of bliss. When I say this, what do I mean? I mean this side. Proper art, sacred art, is also connected to bliss. When you're in your bliss, you are doing a lot of stuff, right? So it's kinetic in the sense that you can say it's technically kinetic in the sense that I'm doing a lot of stuff. But often when you're in this flow state, you're not aware of the actual things you're doing, right? When basketball players are in this flow state, they describe it afterwards. They're like, I kind of realized I did a behind the head no look pass to LeBron and then he dunked it. But I can't really say I thought about it or even that I did it consciously. It kind of just happened. Right? So you can argue that you're not aware of the things that are happening or the cause and effect. You're simply in the flow. And when you are in the flow, in the Joycean system, that is a static state. It's like martial arts, right? You are this eye of the hurricane. You're totally solid and calm, even though like all this stuff is going on and your opponents are like flying all over the room. You are calm in the middle, right? So in that case, you are static because you're static and you're just being brought forward by the flow. You're not actually clenched, moving forward in one direction. I'm going to beat you up, you idiot, or I'm going to run away from you, right? There is no desire or fear in that static flow, right? And those basketball players, I was dimly aware of the score, but I was just kind of, I don't know, I just surrendered and everything just happened. There's a story. Actually, what time is it? I'll skip the extra stories for now. Let's just keep going. So, so when you're in flow, the flow is static, and in the same kind of way, metaphorically, that a river, right, is moving and flowing. Stuff is happening in a river, right? You never step in the same river twice. It's very, very dynamic. But the river itself, the flow itself, is a static thing, right? So there's this sort of interesting, there are multiple levels of talking about what is static and what is not. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I'm skipping over. We'll skip over, the role of rhythm in art. We'll skip the emotions of the comic. There's all this stuff that's sort of covered in it. The Aristotelian sort of sense of harmony, claritas, integritas. We'll just kind of skip over all that because it's not really an art class. I'm just talking about the sacred and profane in art. But there is one kind of sub-aspect of how Joyce and Campbell think about art that I do want to touch on and drill into, because it makes for a very interesting connection with some of the things we've been talking about in terms of archetype and manifestation. Okay? And that is the emotions, not of the comic, but the emotions of the tragic. The emotions of the tragic. And here, the tragic, and this is not Joyce, this is more Aristotle, but Aristotle defines the emotions of the tragic into two, which are pity and terror. Pity and terror. Now, according to Joyce would say Aristotle does not define pity and terror, but I do, right? And Joyce goes ahead and defines pity and terror. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Pity and terror. Pity is the emotion, excuse me. Pity is the emotion that arrests the mind before what is grave and constant in human suffering and unites it with the human sufferer. Now, again, just to clarify, we're in the realm of proper art, sacred art, aesthetic arrest. And under this, there's comic and tragic. And under tragic, excuse my handwriting, is pity and terror. Okay, just to kind of orient you a little bit. And so when we say pity and terror, each of these forms of tragedy will put you into aesthetic arrest. Will put you into aesthetic arrest. And pity then is the emotion that arrests the mind, right? This sense of aesthetic arrest. What is going on here? Sorry. That arrests the mind before what is grave and constant in human suffering and unites it with the human sufferer. So we take, for an example, a guy is shot and assassinated, right? Mr. A shoots Mr. B. And if you are in the state of pity, if pity is what you're going through in this artwork, you bring out the elements in balance to affect a state of aesthetic arrest, where the emotion you use to arrest the mind is that, oh my gosh, that man was shot. And his family, oh my goodness, how must his family be feeling? Oh, and my family, what if that were me, right? But for the grace of God, there go I, right? And oh my gosh, my own grandfather was shot in the same way. Oh, dear me, right? And that's pity. And it arrests you, right? It doesn't make you go out and sort of be a gun control activist, right? It doesn't make you go out and march for, say, Black Lives Matter. And that's not bad. That's not bad, right? That's art that puts you into kinesis, right? And how could you argue that's bad? That's good. It's just a different kind of flavor. So here we arrest you, right? We arrest your mind with this work of art, with the emotion of pity, right? Now, if we do something where the guy is shot and we say, well, you know, we need to really get guns under control, and we turn it into this whole thing advocating for gun control with this work of art, that's okay too. Joyce would call that improper art, not bad art. Improper, i.e. profane art. Profane is not bad. But then that piece that makes you, you know, feel like, oh my gosh, this documentary makes me really, you know, pissed about this, and I'm going to vote for gun control. That would be didactic. That would be didactic improper art. And then when you say, you know, it's, you know, Mr. A is white and Mr. B is black, right? And another black man, right, has been lost to racism, to violence. Then not only do we say, let's vote for, you know, defunding the police and all this stuff, let's like, you know, let's get out there, let's like burn this whole thing down. Let's burn this down, right? We cannot, let's get together with the people who are our allies and let's do something about that. And that's desire, right? That technically would be called, right, pornography, right, to get you to desire to do that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? This is all in the human realm. Sacred and profane are in the human realm. And the way you mix it as an artist or as a consumer of art is that you find your bliss point of salt, sweet, fat, and umami. You find your own bliss point mixture of all of these. Okay. So that's pity. Then we talk about terror. And Joyce's definition of terror is the following. There's only one change in the statement. Terror is the emotion that arrests the mind, again, all same, before what is grave and constant in human suffering, and unites it not with the human sufferer, but with what he refers to as the secret cause. The secret cause. Okay. And just to be a little bit cheeky here, just as Joyce said, Aristotle did not define pity and terror, I have. No one defines the secret cause. Even Campbell was like, secret cause is, he talks about the general stuff, but he doesn't name it. So Campbell and Joyce have not defined the secret cause, I have. Just for you, just in sacred space, because we're making all these lovely connections. If we go back to the original example, Mr. A shoots Mr. B. Mr. A is a white man, Mr. B is a black man, just to roll forward with the same example. We're not dealing with the instrumental cause of Mr. B's death, which is the bullet. We're not dealing with the formal cause of Mr. B's death, which is racism and lack of gun control and, you know, rogue racist police, et cetera, et cetera. We are here asking about the secret cause. What is the secret cause? And the best example I can think of here, and this is an example that Joe Campbell has touched on as well, is that it's not just Mr. A is a white man and Mr. B is a black man, but Mr. B is someone like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And let me just check and make sure we're all still here. Oops. No, that's fine. several weeks before Reverend King's death, he stated in a speech that in insisting on this path, insisting on this next march, he says, "I know I am challenging death." And a few weeks later, he was shot and assassinated. Right? I know I am challenging death. And he proceeded forward anyway. Right? And this, when you think about it, is tragic. It's high tragedy. Right? But is it pity? Do we pity Dr. King? No. No, we don't pity him. Right? He wasn't an innocent victim of circumstance. He knew he was going to die, and he marched forward anyway. How could you possibly do that? Who does that, and why would they do that? Right? And he's like, well, it's a higher cause, and he's a hero and everything. Joyce here would call the cause of Dr. King's death the secret cause. Right? The secret cause. This is what is tragic, this mystery of the relationship between life and death of a man, of a person in this pattern. And so, to me, so we say secret cause and we're like, okay, we don't really know what that means. And everything we've been talking about, we can point to and name exactly what this secret cause is. And the secret cause, which puts you actually into terror, which is very interesting, is what we have been calling the archetype. The archetype. The archetype that Dr. King was in the grip of was the secret cause of his death. Right? This is a man who killed himself, who sacrificed himself willingly to fulfill the pattern of his archetype. And this is why it arrests the mind in terror. Terror is not the same thing as fear. Fear is like, I fear it, so I'm going to run away. Terror is you're rooted to the ground on the spot. You know you're dead and you don't move a muscle. You're in stasis. This is the terror that arrests the mind before what is grave and constant in human suffering and unites it with the secret cause. So when we take this archetype and say this archetype is one and the same with what is grave and constant in human suffering, every human being who sees what happened with Dr. King, sees that he spoke out loud, I am challenging death, and marched forward anyway, this evokes terror because you realize that this pattern that he has fulfilled, this is how a human should live and should die. And that is terrifying to the profane. That is terrifying to the profane. All right, this is how a person should die. Not should and fear, threat, and control, but this is like the ideal pattern of how we all die. As a martyr, as a sacrifice, not a loss, but a sacrifice to something bigger than your own individual self. A hero is one who sees her or his archetype or secret cause and follows it regardless of profane level fear, even if it leads to their death. This is how a person should live and should die. And this evokes terror. When you're not in the sacred, it evokes terror. And this art brings you into this level of the sacred. When I've talked about bliss, in the Bliss program, but also in the couple of sessions here where I've talked about bliss, we've talked about Maslow's 5 levels, right, in the mythic pattern, where the 5 levels of Maslow are in the profane. That's no criticism of Maslow. It wasn't his self-help actualization system that he was describing. He was describing the 5 levels that he empirically found people lived for in his healing practice. And they were, survival, safety, relationship, prestige, and development, right? Personal development. And we said, when we talk about bliss, that the mythic pattern you find for your bliss, once you are in the grip of that pattern, all 5 of those things take a back seat and even fall away, just as they did for the Reverend Dr. King. And the mythic pattern is, of course, the archetype. It is, of course, the secret cause that we talk about. These are all interchangeable in our lexicon. In the Greek system, right, are you a Nestor or are you an Achilles? Right, Nestor, of course, he fought the Trojan War, he did all this pattern, but then he ended up at home, grandchildren all over the place, lived a long, sort of happy life. Achilles was given a choice and said, you can have a long life and no immortal fame. I mean, Nestor kind of got both. I mean, he's not at the level of Achilles, but he shows up in the Odyssey just fine. He shows up in the Iliad just fine. But with Achilles, the choice was you get a long life and no immortal fame. You live well, you live in safety, you die of old age with all of your progeny around you, but no one will remember your name. Or you can have a short life and immortal fame and honor. And you choose, and Achilles chose the latter. And it was this secret cause, this archetypal pattern that killed him and also made him an immortal hero as the archetypal pattern itself for the rest of us. And so when we talk about manifestation, actually, I think I'm done with these slides. Yeah. So let's stop the screen share. All right. Okay, so hopefully you can see me fine on the larger screen now. So when we talk about manifestation, archetypal manifestation, the way to sort of tie that in with all of the rest of this is to say that when you know the secret cause or the archetype you are in the grip of, you can exercise your sovereign will as a creator, because you are a creator, not a slave. And you can change your archetype by navigating from it to another. Okay. So I am a healer, but also artist, trickster, hierophant. Right. There are potentially other ways I can navigate more into the realm of trickster, more into the realm of artist. Right. I can maybe not do healing anymore and try to bring about hierophany in other ways. Or I can follow, non-healing art into more business and like be an investment banker or something like that, right? You can change your archetype. You always do have a choice. And if, say, Dr. King continued moving forward, at any point he can pull the plug on the whole thing and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I mean, I have sovereignty and choice. I can say, I'm not going to listen to my muse anymore. And everyone's horrified. But it's like, the reason you're horrified is because I'd be breaking out of that pattern that is at this very high sacred level of desire, not just need and want. Right? And so those of us who follow the pattern, regardless of outcome in the profane, if we do that, it's because we desire to do so. We desire to do so. Right? I mean, Dr. King desired to continue. He knew he would be shot. But whatever pattern he was following was clearly more important to him, pleasurable, right, if I may use that word, fulfilling of his desire, not just his need and want, his sacred desire, than even the continuance of his normal life as a human. Right? And when we say that, one of the things we do to protect ourselves from that, when we say, that's fine, that's okay for Dr. King, but not for the rest of us. Right? That's okay for Jesus, but not for the rest of us. Jesus was the Son of God. He was the boss's son, so he gets all these special privileges, and we don't do that. So that's why we don't turn the other cheek. Right? We don't love our enemy as ourselves. but somehow we still use Jesus to like sort of do other more nasty things in the profane, right, in his name, right? So because to know that there's no barrier between me and that's what evokes terror. Because all this other stuff that I think is important, all that falls away if you surrender to this and you choose to follow this archetype. But you don't have to. You don't have to, right? So when we talk about manifestation, it's like step one is like seeing what pattern you're in, what archetype, and then saying, okay, do I want to continue this or not? You can sometimes it's hard to change it because your desire, like half of your inner board of directors is saying, no, we don't want to change it. We want to keep going. And the other half is like, hell no, I don't want to die for this, right? You go back into the profane. You say, I take care of one guy, number one, me, nobody else. Right? And it is works of art that bring us to this higher level when we see the transformation of the hero from the profane to the sacred. Even like Han Solo, right? In the first Star Wars back in 1977, he starts off as this rogue pilot, and I think he actually says, "I take orders from one person, me. I'm only in it for the money." And by the end of it, he's risking everything to help Luke destroy the Death Star. Right, and that's why everybody loves him, because he's this like charlatan trickster, and we love him. But he ends up undergoing his own transformation too, into the archetype of the sacred, where even if he dies and loses his reward, and Jabba the Hutt, continues hunting him down, all of that falls away. All of those Maslow's whatever falls away. Right, and you can't even say he did it because of personal development, wanting to be more spiritual, as Han Solo himself said. What good is a reward if you're not around to use it? Right, so he risks his life. What good is fame for Dr. King if he's not around to use it or enjoy it? And the answer is that wasn't the point. Right, the point was the fulfillment of the archetype itself. Right, that is its own reward. Right. For me, I don't follow the muse because she's helping me make the world a better place. Right, I follow the muse because it is good to be close to the muse, right? I'm the biggest brown noser there is. I just want her to like favor me and love me shamelessly. And if in the process of doing that, I have to like help people heal, then fine. I'll do it. I'll do anything. Maybe it's not quite that embarrassing, but it's something like that. It's something like that. And the thing is, the power of something like archetypal manifestation is if you don't see the pattern, then you can't change it. Right? There's no fulcrum. There's no Archimedes fulcrum, right? To put your crowbar on to move the world, right? So you have to see them. So the archetype then is the fulcrum. The archetype, to go back to Joyce's term, is the secret cause of all of this. Okay, just like with Chinese cooking, the benchmark is it's ready when you taste it. And it just like curls your toes. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. It's almost illegal. It's so good, right? And then I know the dish is done and I call the kids down to dinner time. But now what is the secret cause? The secret cause is the archetype of salt, fat, and sweet. And then you tune it where you get the pattern just right, to put you into, culinary aesthetic arrest, right? Your bliss point. And then you make your choices as a creator from there. Just like when I first described archetype, right? I don't even know how many sessions ago. The volcano is the secret cause of the Hawaiian Islands, right? One didn't birth the other, even though they all look like, family members and the same flora, fauna. But the secret cause is below where you can't see it. The volcano putting up the different islands one after another. That's the image I used earlier for when I explained what is an archetype. So archetypal manifestation is exactly this, right? You see the archetype, and then you decide how to change it. And the physics of changing any archetype is different, right? And unique to the archetype itself. Every archetype has its own physics. So for instance, if it's the archetype of a horse versus the archetype of a car, the physics of each are different. Just because we call them both archetypes doesn't really help me. I need to go in and investigate the specific archetype. Right, so you don't feed a horse gasoline to make it go, and you don't whip a car to make it go, the physics of each archetype are completely different. It's a completely case-by-case kind of situation. So when you see the archetype in its wholeness and see it united with what is grave and constant in human suffering, I have to die, and I will. I know I'm challenging death, and here I keep going. It puts you into aesthetic arrest. You are dumbfounded, right? Because when you realize that about Dr. King, you don't say, oh, I want to do that and be just like him. It's not pornographic. You don't desire him. And it's also not didactic. It's like, oh my gosh, why would he do that? I would never do that. It's static. It's not kinetic. You are absolutely rooted to the ground right there. And you are put into aesthetic arrest, where you realize, if I were in that situation, I would do no different. Maybe you don't admit that to yourself, but you feel it deep in your body. And that puts you into terror, because the rest of you is like, what the? Are you kidding? We can't do that. We have kids to feed. We have a mortgage to pay. We can never do that. Right? So you're rooted to the spot in terror, where you know that in that situation, there is no choice. You don't desire to be there. But if you were in that, you would not turn it away either. Right? The pattern is what it is. And if you are in it, you know you will complete it. In the sacred, it is already done. There is no time in the sacred, because there's only one thing. Right? In the sacred, there is no time, there are no things. So, great works of art: Romeo, Juliet, King Lear, Macbeth. There is no, oh, well, how could Romeo have gotten the letter in time to not kill himself? No, it is part of the pattern that he dies. Right? It has already happened and will always happen. It's literally in the script. Right? The archetype, the script that the players use before they get on stage. You meet someone, a lover, for the first time, and you are hit with the thunderbolt, and ping, the whole pattern is there. And you know, you have this inkling, this is going to be incredible, or this is going to end in disaster, and you're in aesthetic arrest. You're like, it's not even desire or fear anymore. You're just playing it all out. Right? There's a feeling of surrender to your fate when you fall in love, and it just takes you, and you suffer and burn most of the time with a smile on your face, right? And at the end of it, when you're all tattered and you look like you've just been out of the tumble cycle, you say to yourself, I'm in like the worst pain I've ever been in my life, but I wouldn't have changed it for anything, right? If I had known all of this would have happened from the beginning, I think I probably would have still gone ahead and done it, right? But this feeling of the inevitable is partly from this direct perception of the archetype. Right? In the profane, in the small world, in the xiaoqi world, right, you can still snivel and avoid your glory and destiny in this life. But then the golden thread, right, the golden thread that we've talked about, carries beyond you. And even if you turn it away this life, it will eventually be fulfilled. Right? If you say, the love affairs are not for me, and you avoid love all your life, your granddaughter, or if you don't have kids, someone who reads books that you've written, right, will be like, I'm not like that. And someone that is sort of your progeny, your descendant, biologically or not, will be swept up in her time, even if you refuse it in your time. When we talk about enlightenment experiences, right, in a way you can say the archetype you perceive in an enlightenment experience is the archetype of archetypes, or even at the level where there's the one thing. So even archetype falls away, right? Because an archetype is a naming too. It says it is this pattern, it is not this other pattern. And then if there's only one thing, there is no pattern either. Archetype falls away as well. And you have this like monumental, ginormous feeling experience of basically what is aesthetic arrest. Right? This is why when hermits reach a certain level of enlightenment, they just like crawl into a cave and sit there, and they don't even eat. Right? They're at that level of aesthetic arrest. And so, let's see, how are we doing on time? So this is, let me just skip through my notes here. There's all these sort of little rabbit holes that I kind of put in there, but I think I probably shouldn't go into all of these. So I guess what I'm saying at the end of the day is that art and beauty, there is the sense of proper art and improper art, sacred art and profane art. There is no, there's nothing bad about profane art, but sacred art, proper art, will tend to put you on a path toward the sacred and toward your bliss, which is sacred. This is why art museums feel so sacred, even though there's no priests and there's no religion being practiced, right? And why a powerful work of art, a work of proper art, puts you into the sacred, this feeling of sacred, which is the state of aesthetic arrest. And the state of aesthetic arrest is a state of the sacred. Now, of course, a big tech dude or hedge fund bro who goes into, you know, the Museum of Modern Art and who feels this, right? He will want to buy the work of art or steal it and have it in his like basement living room where nobody even knows he owns it, right? And you know, there will be this among this sort of powerful, powerful person, still this impulse to control the thing. So even a sacred work of art will put him, not to be sexist, him or her, I guess, into a state of pornographic kinetics. And he will be instantly, even though he has a sacred aesthetic arrest for an instant, his reflex of the profane will instantly transport back into the realm of improper art and the profane. Right, so he has this experience, but then he falls back in to the realm of the profane instantly because, you know, the bias, the sort of prejudice here is that someone who has spent that much effort and life force accumulating that much money is very deep in the profane. And that's why, you know, the sort of saying in the Bible, Jesus or whatever, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle, which is already impossible, than for a rich man to get into heaven. Right? It's an excess of ego power that keeps you in fear, threat, and control. Right? Where you know the price of everything and the value of nothing, et cetera, et cetera. All those things we use to shame, you know, the rich, right? But when it's said in this way, it's not a social commentary on the evils of capitalism. It's simply the physics, the logistics of having too much ego power, where your muscles of the profane are so strong that when you even have the feeling of a sacred release for even a nanosecond, the profane, the beast, comes up and says, well, I want that too. I want everything. I want everything to sort of fill this hole that can't be filled. And that's why it's hard for a rich man to go. It's impossible for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle and get into heaven. Because heaven is a state of the sacred. It's where you surrender. Anyway, an artist then is a hierophant. In the words of Jean Erdman, right, Joseph Campbell's wife, a mystic, but who has a craft that ties her to the world, right? Art is the craft that ties the hierophant mystic to the world and is also the bridge she uses to bridge between the sacred and profane. Profane art is kinetic and puts you into desire and fear. Actually, let me draw this. How are we doing on time? Okay. Sorry, this is a little bit slow because I'm switching back and forth here. Let me just let's just do it here. Hopefully you can see my screen. So profane art is kinetic, okay? Desire and fear. Profane art is kinetic. It puts you into either desire or fear. If fear is the rule of the day, you're selling stocks. And if greed is the rule of the day, you're buying stocks. Okay. And it's this constant up and down seesaw all throughout life that makes, the wheel of the world. For those of you who've done the clarity program, the Bhava Chakra wheel of the world that keeps it rolling. Sacred art is static. It doesn't move. It puts you into the still point of aesthetic arrest. And here, the still point is here. This is the point of reality, of life, that does not move. Right? You're like, oh, I'm going to escape and enlighten and awaken and escape this entire world. You can't. Right? This is the world. You are in it. But you can find the place within it. So like profane is here and sacred is here. When you meditate, you're going to this point. Right? The still point of aesthetic arrest, the fulcrum point in the center of the seesaw, the point that does not move. One of the epithets of the Buddha, right, is that the one who attained awakening at the still point, between desire and fear. Between desire and fear. But then also a too earnest spiritual seeker can easily profane their journey because they desire too hard and they fear that, oh my gosh, I'm going to go through life, I'm going to die, and I'm never going to get to awakening. This is the profane reflex, that this desire and fear is the thing that blocks them, right? So if you say, oh my gosh, I really, really, really want enlightenment, and I fear I'm going to die without being enlightened, and if you stay in that, I mean, you never get here, right? It's the desire that blocks you. This is, by the way, I don't work with entrepreneurs and startups who make devices to help you do awakening, or tech bros who are trying to hack enlightenment with microdosing or whatever, or do singularity, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but that's all born of the impulse to control, right? I mean, the sort of, there's just something kind of wretched and miserable about like coming up with a device that helps you attain enlightenment by wearing it on your head, and then getting on Facebook and doing an ad which like lures you in with the desire of enlightenment and the fear of not getting enlightenment. So you buy my like $300 device to put on your head because of your desire to get to like this thing. I don't begrudge anybody else doing it, but it just feels a little bit wretched to me. And it's like, I don't know, it's not pleasurable, so I don't do it. The impulse to control is itself the block, itself the thing that keeps you trapped in the profane. Because the static is no movement, and it is surrender. And so at the ultimate level of reality, there is no movement, there is no time, because there is only one thing. And at the sacred level, right, the reason it's the still point, and the reason the still point unites you with the true nature of reality, is because the true nature of reality is still, nothing moves, because there's only one thing. And we talked about all this in the Tao Te Ching session a couple months ago. All right. So where does that leave us? Let's close the video and go back to yeah, I mean, Sherry just put up this quote from T.S. Eliot, which is exactly on this. And thank you for doing. I'm just going to read it because it's, with Joyce and Campbell, it's exactly the same thing. I'll just read it especially for Facebook folks who can't see it. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards. At the still point where the dance is, but neither arrest nor movement. And do not call it fixity, where past and future are gathered, neither movement from nor towards, neither ascent nor decline. It's not going up to heaven. As Christ said at the end of the Thomas Gospel, the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, and people do not see it. Neither ascent nor decline, except for the point, the still point, there would be no dance, and there is only the dance. So the still thing in the middle, in your flow, and then everything kind of, this harmony kind of thing going on all around you. All right. So all right. So it's 11:30. We've probably gone too deep as it is, but that's it. That's what I wanted to say about the sacred and profane in art and beauty. And post any questions you may have on any of that in the comments or in the question area. And yeah, not all of that was Joyce and Campbell, obviously, but I'm fine with it being mishmashed together. It's just a delicious stew anyhow. Okay, so before I close then, the last thing I want to do is just kind of do our suggested exercise for this next week before the next session. And the exercise I thought of here was simply to ask yourself, and do this only if you want, right? There's no fear, threat, and control, but it's just kind of this fun little exercise, which is to think explicitly, what kinds of things, not just works of art. It's like, oh, the last time I was in the Met Museum. No, just things in general in the world. What kinds of things have put you into a state of aesthetic arrest? When have you been in this state of aesthetic arrest in your lifetime? Right, where it's just like, right, you're just like in this dumb animal deer in the headlights mode, when your brain just stops. I mean, it's different for everyone, right? So the question for you specifically is, when has a work of art put you into the sacred, into aesthetic arrest? When I thought about this, this very lowbrow popular media thing came to me. And I want to share this with you because it's so like popular media, nerdy, lowbrow. It's not like, oh, the last time I saw Picasso's whatever, right? For me, one of the things that popped up first was when I watched that movie, The Matrix, right? The Matrix with Neo and Morpheus and all this stuff going on from about 20 years ago. And there's this moment, so it's like it can't get any more popular sort of popcorn media than that, right? And for me, I remember this moment in the movie The Matrix. At the end, when Neo, Keanu Reeves, stopped the bullets, right? He didn't just fight and beat them. He didn't just run faster. He had already helped Trinity out of the helicopter, so he proved to everyone and himself that he was the one, right? But beyond that, he got to a point where he was escaping, everything he was risking. He needed to get out of there, otherwise he would die in real life, right? But he paused, and that moment, he stopped the bullets. And the exact moment that put me into aesthetic arrest where he stopped the bullets, and the camera switches to Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, who is his John the Baptist, right? Neo is like Christ, and Morpheus is John the Baptist. And that's something, as a Hierophant, as a healer, I identify with, right? My mythic form, in many ways, is a Gandalf, is a Dumbledore, but it's also the guide, a la John the Baptist. In other words, my pattern is that I am not the one. I am the one who prepares the way for the one, right? And when I do bliss, when I do healing, the one I am preparing the way for is the one within every one of you. That's my job, right? That's my job. Hopefully I won't need to like sort of sacrifice my life for that anytime soon. But we'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But the thing that put me into aesthetic arrest was not when he stopped the bullets. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. He can stop the bullets. And that's cool. But when it shifted to Lawrence Morpheus's face, and he was just like, it's like you already know he's the one. But when you see him stop the bullets, that's just next level. Where Morpheus is just like, and there's this full sense of like completeness in him where it's like, I've done what I was supposed to do. I brought him, I recovered him and installed him, and I'm done. I've completed my archetypal mythic pattern. And that feeling of it's beyond satisfaction. It's just your brain stops. You are in aesthetic arrest. And with me, when I, with my pattern, saw that, I went into aesthetic arrest as well. I completely mirrored it, right? Your brain just stops, and the lens you have on reality completely changes over. Desire and fear fall away. And the whole archetype of reality and what is really going on, the thing that has been completed, once you complete it, once you finally complete the puzzle, you step back and look at the whole image, and you're kind of in this aesthetic arrest. It's a stunning, stunning thunderbolt. So that's the popcorn example for me. It's all around us in popular media. This is why storytelling is intrinsically human. We have all this technology, and still we care about story. Gaming is story. Watching movies is story, right? Watching Netflix is story. And so the question then is, this is why art is important. This is why when we like cut funding for schools and we cut art and music, right? And everyone says, oh, boo-hoo, that's terrible, but they can't really put their finger on why. It's because we're cutting the sacred out of education and piling it more onto the profane. When you cut art and music and you do more like trade school sort of vocational training for specific jobs, that's okay. But that's taking the profane from 80% to 99%, right? And that's why it feels necessary out of fear, threat, and control, but also you just feel like something died inside of you, right? That's that feeling. So that's the exercise. So reflect on that. Where have works of art in your life put you into a state of aesthetic arrest? And exactly what moment? And when you find the moment, that will actually tell you something about the mythic form you're in, as a by the way. So that's it. That's the exercise I would suggest to you to do only if you want, and just see how that goes. You can post questions, and we'll do Q&A maybe in the next session. Okay, so that's all I've got for today. Gary's off today. She'll be back for Q&A maybe next week or the week after. And so with that, I'll go ahead and I'll close Sacred Space. So our next session, of course, is Sunday. It's free. It's open to everyone. Please invite other people. We always love having more people in for this. Ask a lot of questions. And the green button you have there on your screen, for those of you on Facebook, it's in the text post of the live. You can sign up for next Sunday session today, right now, if you want. And I'll go ahead and close our session then. So I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me, and thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment of the shared sacred space with me. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and the undue control of others. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I will see you in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.